Good evening and kia ora everyone. Malo elele talofa lava kia orana, malo ni nisa bolavinaka, whakalofa lahi atu Māori, aloha, warm Pacific greetings to you all. O ki ngoko Diana, me Aotearoa New Zealand, ko ta mai mo ko whae kwak me tonga, me hapai mo vavao. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you so very much for the kind opportunity to join you all this evening, and welcome to the University of Otago, o Tako Whakaihu Waka, the place of many firsts. And tonight we are celebrating and acknowledging Professor Lynley Anderson's Inaugural Professorial Lecture. A privilege to be here and also to have the opportunity to offer a few welcomes and acknowledgements on this very, very special and important occasion. Acknowledging mana whenua and also our distinguished and special guests who are joining us. And I understand that there are many here in the room, but also that there are just as many, if not more, who are linking in online from near and from afar. But to begin with, I do need to acknowledge that we also have family here tonight. We also have family linked in online. We also have special friends, guests, colleagues, and many, many others. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you all. The academic party that is here, gathered here down at the front in support and also to stand alongside Professor Lynley Anderson tonight consists of Professor Swaitonia Green, who is our Dean for the Dunedin School of Medicine, tēnā koe. We also have Professor Lynley Anderson herself, who is now a professor in the Bioethics Centre, tēnā koe. We also have Professor Neil Pickering, who is also joining us here, again from the Bioethics Centre. Tēnā koe to you. All right. And welcome also to other colleagues who have made the effort to be here to join us this evening. I have been tasked with making some very special mentions tonight, and I have a list here, and I would like to begin this evening with acknowledging that we have here in the room Professor Lynley Anderson's husband, John. John, I would like to ask, please, could you raise your hand and wave it around so people know who you are? John, welcome. Thank you for being here. We also have Lynley's sister and brother-in-law, Jan and Roy. Could you please raise your hands? Thank you. Welcome. We also have Lynley's brother and sister-in-law, Howie and Marion. Where are you tonight? Wonderful. Down here at the front. Welcome. We have Lynley's brother-in-law and sisters-in-law, Janice, Lee and Margot, who are here as well. Please raise your hands. Wonderful. Over here. Welcome. Now, so those are the close family members who are here in the room. We also have some who are linking in online. And so I'd like to acknowledge that we have joining us tonight Sister Helen and partner Chris. Welcome to you both. And I understand that there are 3 sons and their families. So the eldest son is Michael and his wife Lisa. Welcome to you. We also have the middle son, Harris. Great to have you here, Harris. And last but certainly not least, we have the youngest son. We have Connor and his wife, Emily. Thank you and welcome for joining. Welcome to you all. This is an incredible and special occasion for everyone, but of course, especially for Professor Lynley Anderson. And we know that the proudest people in the room and online will be her family members. So I would like to ask that we could please recognise and acknowledge her family for their sacrifice and their hard work in looking after Professor Lynley and also allowing her to be part of our university community and giving of her wonderful and excellent contributions that we are going to hear more about tonight. So I'd like to please ask that we acknowledge Professor Lynley Anderson's family tonight together. And of course, the biggest congratulations of the evening to Professor Lynley Anderson herself, who we will have the privilege of hearing more from shortly. And we will be hearing more about her excellent contributions across the research, across the teaching and the service domain areas. And as you can appreciate, it will be very difficult to distill a wonderful and stellar career into this short time. So we'll be hearing just a snapshot of Professor Lynley Anderson's contributions tonight. And we look forward to hearing from you. I would like to hand over to our next speaker and have the privilege of welcoming our Dean of the Dunedin School of Medicine to come forward and offer a more fuller introduction and detailed rundown of Professor Lynley Anderson's achievements tonight. Welcome, Professor Swaitonia Green. Please join me in welcoming her to the front.
Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koe, Diane. Thank you for your beautiful, warm welcome and for bringing in Professor Lynley Anderson's whānau and family. Tēnā koe, Lynley. It's just lovely to be here. Just this such special occasion. Tēnā koe, Neil, and tēnā koutou katoa. It's just lovely to have you all here this evening to celebrate a person who we all admire, respect, value, who's an incredibly important part of our academic community and such a special colleague and friend to many and all of us. My task is to provide a bit of an introduction to Lynley and give you a little bit of background. Ko waio, he manutaki o ki te kura whaiora o Ōtepoti. I'm the Dean of the Dunedin School of Medicine, and I also follow in the footsteps of Lynley, who was acting Dean on my arrival, and I just want to acknowledge the intense support you have provided to the Dunedin School of Medicine over many years. So Lynley is a professor. We're very proud to have Lynley as a professor in our Centre for Bioethics, soon to be our Department of Bioethics, and that is in part due to Lynley and the whole team's advocacy for the centre to be recognised as a department. I just want to reflect on Lynley's background a little bit. So Lynley grew up on a sheep farm, 1,500 acres near Balcluthe or South Otago, to a somewhat slightly rebellious feminist mother, Ruth, who I think has given you some of... Beth, oh my apologies. Who I think's given you some of your grit. And I love the story that Lynley gave me where her mother would put the bouquet of flowers in the church and split them so she could see Lynley while she was playing the organ and keep an eye on Lynley. And your father, Clyde, who has been an immense hard worker with an intense work ethic throughout his life, who I know he has passed that work ethic on to you and your sense of service. You went to Romahapa School at the age of 4 to join a friend, so you went slightly early. And back then, I think you described in your early teenage years that your career advice was either to be a teacher or a nurse. But you decided that you were going to train in physiotherapy. And so spent 3 years at doing your physiotherapy qualification, and then immensely enjoyed your practice in the hospital and then subsequently in private practice, but kept studying part-time even while you were doing that in women's studies and bioethics, and completed a Master of Health Science in bioethics in 1998. And you described that you had seen in your clinical practice that there were some troubling things that you saw in terms of the environment and in terms of the way people were, that there were some troubling dilemmas when you were in your professional practice, and that actually studying bioethics helped you to start make sense of it all. And so that has become your career and your passion. So you became a lecturer in the Bioethics Centre in 1999, progressed to senior lecturer in 2010, an associate professor in 2015, and now full professor. I think we can all say that Lynley has been someone who we have known who's had tremendous values of commitment and service to all of those around us. Lynley has served as head of department between 2017 and 2022, Deputy Dean of the Dunedin School of Medicine from 2021, and Acting Dean twice in November 2021 to July 22, and again in July 2024 until I came in October. You've convened the professional development program for our medical program for a very long time, providing really strong leadership and teaching in professionalism to our medical practitioners, and that's been immensely rewarding, and we've seen the fruits of your labour over many years. Your research, just to pick out a few, and of course you'll be speaking to some of this evening, including trans women in elite women's sport, ethics in sports medicine, and the one that I find most interesting and thoughtful is unacceptable behaviours experienced by our clinical students in our clinical environment, and related to that, anti-bullying initiatives. You've provided service in terms of being a manager of the review of our Code of Professional Conduct for medical students, which helps us align our student progress with a clear framework for professional conduct. You've chaired student progress committees. You've been deeply invested in the progress of our students. You've chaired the Health Research Council Ethics Committee and the Ethics Committee on Assisted Reproductive Technology. I think it's no stretch to say that Lynley is one of our brightest and quietest stars, always humble, thoughtful, giving and caring, and it's an enormous privilege to have you present your IPL. Before I finish, I just want to note that you are wearing a beautiful kākahu. The kākahu is called Piki Ki Te Pai Tai, and it is woven by an expert weaver, Ranui Ngā Rimu, Order of the New Zealand Order of Merit. I think the kākahu is incredibly relevant this evening because the story of this is that it commences at the hem with the piki moka, or from where a journey starts. It then ascends to a series of pai tai, which represents success on each journey, with a culmination of many firsts, or taku whakaihu waka. The huka huka, which are the beautiful brown threads, represent the challenges to be overcome. And I think that describes the journey to becoming a professor extremely well, that it is a layer upon layer of overcoming challenge and achieving a new level of knowledge and contribution. So tēnā koe Lynley, it is so lovely to be here with you, and we look forward to hearing from you. Tēnā koe.
Such an honour to wear this garment. I think I'm only the second person to wear it, so thank you very much. It belongs to the Dunedin School of Medicine. So tēnā koutou katoa, ko Lynley Anderson tōku ingoa. Thank you all for coming to my inaugural professorial lecture. I am a little embarrassed that I've taken so long to deliver this. I was actually awarded this about 3 years ago. But other engagements and appointments have contributed to this delay, and let's blame COVID, maybe not. This is not the only reason. The thought of it doing this filled me with dread. However, what should have been an IPL has turned into my valedictory address, as my retirement is on the horizon. So just prior to writing this lecture, a friend told me to speak about your passion. What has driven you for the last 30 years? Because I have been here for now 30 years. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself, and Tony has told you some things. I grew up on in a farming family just outside of the Catlins at a place called Romahapa. It actually looks like there's no roads around the Catlins. There are roads. We didn't walk. Well, we did walk, but we didn't walk. There were roads. And there were 4 kids in our family. I was number 4 of 4. And as all of you here can tell, clearly the cutest. There is my mum, Beth, and my father, Clyde. Clyde's still alive at 96. And as anyone who grew up with 3 older siblings will know, we 4th children develop a strong sense of fairness and an ability to eat quickly. I attended Romahapa Primary School, a school with a very small role. So joining the school meant that the school could now field a hockey team. We had enough people. I went to South Otago High School for my secondary education and then came to Dunedin to attend physiotherapy school. On graduating, I worked at Dunedin Public Hospital. Entering healthcare, even as a student, was daunting. As a student, I experienced a great deal of poor behaviour, mostly from patients, and in particular, sexualised behaviour from patients towards students. There was very little support and acknowledgement, and I didn't know what had hit me or how to respond, but there'll be more on that later. What was noticeable was when I was working in the wards, was that my training was sorely lacking. Not through any fault of my teachers. I had outstanding anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology and kinesiology training. It was of a very high standard, but there was a gaping hole of content. Now, please do not interpret this to mean that the physiotherapy school was somehow inadequate or that it was somehow out of step. I'm fairly confident that most clinical schools around the country taught in the same way. That is, a very strong emphasis on the sciences and clinical skills, but everything else needed to be learnt by some kind of osmosis, with senior colleagues, some of whom were excellent and others less so. So naturally, I found myself in some very difficult clinical situations, observing death and dying, witnessing suffering in my patients who refused to have physiotherapy. What were they thinking? Or demanding treatment. And I was expected to know what to do and then you were asked to contribute within a multidisciplinary team meeting. And I had no words to contribute, no vocabulary to articulate what I was seeing or feeling. I was poorly equipped in how to respond and embarrassed by what I didn't know. The code of ethics that was available for physiotherapists at the time was esoteric and not readily accessible to a newly graduated physiotherapist. So I wanted to do the right thing. Whatever the right thing was, I didn't know. It was incredibly bewildering. Then I found, after 2 years working in the hospital and some time in private practice, and now pregnant with our first child, I decided to return to tertiary education. As Tony has said, I took papers such as women's studies, moral philosophy, but found my home in medical ethics and bioethics, taking postgraduate papers and taking part in anything the Bioethics Centre had on offer. A few years later, and now with 3 sons, I was appointed to the staff at the Bioethics Centre, and that was 1995, last millennium. So, I was appointed to work as a junior research fellow, to work on the new curriculum for the medical school and to do some tutoring. Thanks to Professor Alistair Campbell for giving me that start. So after being troubled by my own experiences, here was my chance to think long and hard about teaching and curriculum development and an opportunity to apply those concepts to medicine, other health professional programs and the physiotherapy school. So looking back on my 30-year career of teaching, research and service within the medical school and the dental, physiotherapy and other health professional schools, my further education and a master's and PhD in sports medicine ethics, here's what I think I have learned regarding what I think all health professional students need in order to be the best they can in their support of their patients and of each other. In fact, this is what I have engaged in an effort to bring these about over the last 30 years. So, let's have a look. So, in order to have our students flourish, which is what we have in the centre there, these are what I think we should do, these 4 circles going around the outside. And in fact, this is what we do. We have ethics training, professionalism training. We need to think about self-care and protection for students. And we need clear guardrails so that students and clinicians have sufficient guidance. You might wonder what guardrails are, but I will get onto that in a moment. So the other thing that is centrally important, those things don't happen by themselves. We still need, I'm not downplaying the need for good anatomy, pathology, clinical skills and physiology. All of those sciences are centrally important. So what I've changed in that diagram is that I actually think these features are important for clinical staff flourishing as well. These are not exclusive to students, and this is what we need for everybody who's practicing some form of healthcare. I've taken a particular interest in groups of clinical staff who work outside of traditional and predictable settings of healthcare. And so just a point I want to make before we get into these 4 elements is that there have been a lot of aspects of my career, some of which are significant, but I've had to choose what to say in the 40 minutes I've got. So while I've written over 25 papers on the topics of sports medicine ethics, I won't be able to do it justice here. And I'm just going to talk, as Diane said, just going to pick out a few features. So I said we need ethics training, and and these are the 4 central elements in medical ethics. At its core, medical ethics provides a framework for navigating the complex and often emotionally charged decisions inherent in healthcare. It allows us to reflect upon our duties and responsibilities to patients, healthcare colleagues, and to society. The 4 foundational principles of biomedical ethics, autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice, serve as the guiding lights. These are all important. In order for these to be effective, these concepts need to be taught and revisited in a kind of a spiral curriculum. And for those of you who don't know what that means, well, we need to provide the values initially, and then we need to give the students a chance to revisit, to apply them in a different clinical context and with different clinical cases and settings, with increasing complexity and more depth each year. We need to give students confidence to work with ethical values and to have the ability to stop what they're doing and ask, why are we doing this? To actually pause. These principles are not rigid rules, but rather a framework for navigating dilemmas, requiring nuanced ethical reasoning and judgment. Consequently, ethics education must transcend just mere memorization of those principles. It needs to equip students and professionals with critical thinking skills, to analyse complex situations and weigh competing ethical demands and make reasoned decisions that respect patient values within diverse and often resource-constrained times. And that's even more so as we speak. Do you know, in my lifetime, we've seen the move from the position that doctor knows best, and this all happened within my very short lifespan, doctor knows best, to a situation now where patient autonomy became central, and then also where we have moved now towards a shared decision-making model where the clinician and the patient bring something specific to the conversation, and that they can share that they can share those elements together and come up with a solution that is right for the patient. And so the patient gets some guidance in doing so. So, we're going to move now on to professionalism. So, while medical ethics involves a careful and systematic analysis of moral decisions that arise specifically within healthcare practice, professionalism, on the other hand, encompasses the array of values, behaviours and attitudes expected from healthcare professionals to uphold public trust and patient safety. So let's move on now then to professionalism training, that blue circle on the outside. So, here are the values that are important elements of professionalism. And you can see that they relate and align very closely with the ideas and the ideas of ethical values and ethical principles. And by talking to students, what we are trying to do is to imbue this individual student with these key attributes so that they will personally take these attributes on board. So our medical students are told about these right from day one, these values that are important and how important they are for their clinical practice. So that's at the individual level. We also want medical students, and I'm going to be talking about medical students, but actually we could probably replace the term medical students with physio students or dental students or whoever else, so that they start off with their previous identity, their own gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, culture, socioeconomic status, and we're taking them through a process of socialisation so that they are going from that lay person they were to someone who now thinks and acts like a doctor. And that is a really complex situation. In fact, full professional identity formation is said to take about 15 years minimum. So it takes a while. So we've talked about the values each one has to hold within themselves. We've talked about what's happening to them in medical school and after becoming that professional. And then they've also got to understand that that medicine is embedded within society. And that is part of what we call the social contract. And so it is a bargain between medicine and society. And this is true of all professions, such as law or whatever. So medicine is granted lots and lots of good things, good pay, status, autonomy, monopoly, the right to say who's in and who's out, self-regulation and rewards on the understanding that they will give good things back to society. And students need to know this, because if they make a bad step, the social contract can and will be rewritten. And we have had examples of that in the past. When we're talking about professionalism and professional training, we've also got to think about self-care. We want students and staff to remain as effective clinical carers for as long as possible. We don't want them burning out. We don't want them to get compassion fatigue, where they lose their ability to be empathetic with patients. To do this requires students and staff to be able to sustain their own practice. So the analogy of an oxygen mask that drops down in front of your face and you are told to put it on before you help others. Put it on so you can help others. That's the same idea that's involved in any kind of healthcare. We want students to be reflective, to consider the activities that they've engaged in, to have a mentor and seek mentoring on an ongoing basis, and keeping connected both professionally and personally. Let's move on then to guardrails. Now, guardrails can be codes of ethics, or they can be statements or standards, but they're there to help guide our clinical practice. Now, there's a tendency to think of codes of ethics as punitive, that it is a way of punishing the clinician who's acted badly. Now, codes of ethics do have that role. That's one of the roles they do, but it's so much more than that. It's the kind of wraparound support and guidance that students and staff can take on board. So it's a visible sign of that social contract. That's where the social contract will be seen often. It provides safety and predictability for patients, clinician, and it can set up the kind of environment necessary for encouraging trust and so on. It can also educate new professionals about expectations and professional values, and it can shield professionals from external demands. And that is so true when we're thinking about sport and sports medicine ethics, because we'll get onto that in a minute actually. So I've engaged in writing a number of codes of ethics over the years, and there have been 3 or 4 in particular, but let's have a look at 3 of them. So the first one was the Australasian College of Sport and Exercise Physicians. So this one, I had completed my PhD and I interviewed 16 sports doctors working with elite teams in New Zealand, and I interviewed them to map the ethical challenges they faced. I found their code to be full of gaps, and so I was asked to write their new one. As I said, codes can act as a shield, and because sports doctors can be working in a context where there are various stakeholders, not all of them holding the welfare of the patient at heart, a code can be used as a means of deflecting demands that ask the clinician to act in breach of their traditional medical obligations. So they can be incredibly helpful to people. The next one I wrote was for Aotearoa New Zealand's Physiotherapy Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. I then carried out extensive research with physiotherapists and rewrote their code of ethics. Now, I don't want to say that I carried out the research by myself, but in actual fact, you always write codes of ethics with clinicians, with the professional bodies, and you need a lawyer as well, just to make sure you're not asking too much. And the last one, next code of ethics that was written, was the one that covers all medical students in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And while I'm not the only author on this one, I'm the one who's kind of has the guardianship of the code, and I bring together staff and students from Auckland and Otago to write and revise the student code of ethics. Now, you've got to take a lot of care when drafting a code of ethics. I'll just show you some ones that are not so great. But writing a code of ethics takes care and attention to detail. And you've got to always look for those unintended consequences. And this one, this statement from a code of ethics, and there's usually a number of sections of a code of ethics. And this is a real one and it comes from Australia. The student will not use the professional relationship to develop a sexual or exploitative relationship with a patient or staff member where a conflict of interest exists. So get rid of the conflict of interest and go for it. I couldn't believe that. And then the Australasian College of Sport and Exercise Physicians, their first one before I came along and patched it up. Ordering unnecessary investigations or materials for pecuniary gain is unethical. So get rid of the pecuniary gain and you can order whatever you like. Okay, so we've got to be really careful about what message we are sending and what we are saying. So it's quite a bit of finessing doing this. I've also been involved in writing guidelines or statements. So this one is about consent for medical student involvement in patient care. Now this is where we've come a long way from the old doctor knows best, where students could just follow the doctor into the operating theatre or the clinic. But now consent must be obtained before that student is present. And it's come about because of some behaviours that have become apparent and detected that weren't so great, some of them at Otago and some of them at Auckland. So, you know, there's nobody's doing it exactly right, but we've now got some guidance here on this. I've also been involved in writing a document for sports physicians on the use of stem cells in knee repair primarily. And I've also been involved in writing documents on incidental findings in surgery, where what a surgeon should do if they come across something that was not anticipated, but now the patient is anaesthetised and the surgery has already commenced. What do we do now? I've also been, when we're thinking about the student involvement in patient care, I've been working with the staff at Te Whatu Ora Southern to develop, this is pamphlets for patients who might come into the hospital, into clinics or into procedural places, just to let them know that there are students here and you know, we are in a teaching hospital and there's all sorts of students, not just med students, but there's students from the Polytech as well, nursing, midwifery, etc. So that was a joint effort, Te Whatu Ora, University of Otago and Te Pukenga, as it was then. Yes. We've also, I've also been involved in actually writing and modifying, this is just part of it, the consent form for patients who are undergoing a procedure where the consent has to be sought for a student to be involved and at what level of involvement. You can see there, are they, I consent to students, this is in the second part, to observe, to assist, to conduct, and even to catheterise the patient, urinary catheterisation. Right, so that's the guardrails that I've been involved in. The next one is care and protection. So moving now to the green circle, this brings us quite nicely back to my own personal experiences as a student with patients who engaged in kind of sexualised behaviour towards students when I was a physiotherapy student and a physio staff member. We need to care for our patients. We need we need to listen to their experiences. Some of them are not pleasant. And I've been involved in anti-bullying research. We came to this understanding as the medical school some years ago that some of our students weren't they weren't having a great time. And so we carried out a literature review, identified elements of exemplary clinical teaching environments, and we applied these teaching environments in developing a tool that people could use to contribute to a positive learning environment. And then we get on to the material that is directly related to my experience. So this is called the Unacceptable Behaviours Research that I've been engaged with. So we got a number of staff from across the Division of Health Sciences who represented medicine, dentistry, physio, oral health, pharmacy, postgraduate nursing, which is up in Christchurch, and radiation therapy, which is in Wellington. And we surveyed just the clinical years, so not the preclinical years, but just the years 4, 5 and 6 for medicine, 3, 4 for physio, those kind of groups when they are actually on the wards. And this was designed by students as well. We adapted an existing survey to the New Zealand situation and we asked about their experiences of unacceptable behaviours. We were finding out the frequency and whether they reported it to anyone, and if not, why not. Here was my chance to find out whether my experiences as a student and as a clinician were shared by others. So, just a little taster of the results, not going into this in detail. So the orange, so we had 44% response rate, and so we had 733 students responded to the survey, and 72% of the people who responded to the survey had at least one unacceptable behaviour happen to them. 28% of the people who responded had no unacceptable behaviours experienced. And it's really hard to tell about those people who didn't respond to the survey. You don't know whether you're under or over reporting. But we can see here that public humiliation, so some of these people may have experienced more than one report, but we can see here that public humiliation was 325, subjected to offensive sexist remarks and names, the number was 211, experienced unwanted sexual advances and behaviour, 175. So you put those last two together, we get 386 students have experienced this. It's way too many. And so you can see racially and ethnically offensive remarks and names, felt shamed, whakama, due to race or ethnicity. So if you put those two together, you've got 290. So, and then threatened with physical harm or physically harmed. So, it's pretty grim. We are in the process of publishing the findings from this particular research and possibly repeating the survey this year before I retire. Hurry up. That was to me. But what we do know is that there is a call for action, and we are putting out there that we want to make a call for action. And we know that certain groups in the student body actually experience greater burdens than other people. Obviously, there will be people who experience it much less, and there'll be people who experience it much more. We have found that the university lacks consistent policy around this area. There's just nothing much there. And students need some support here. We can no longer turn a blind eye to student experiences in this space. So a call for action is timely. We also ask students, what would you like us to do? What would you like the University of Otago to do if you could ask them to do something? And we've got a range of fantastic ideas from students. Reporting mechanisms, make sure you take people's claims seriously. It's really enlightening to see what they've said. So, we've come full circle. We've gone round the traps. So, to me, medical ethics and professionalism are not mere academic exercises or optional add-ins to clinical practice. Rather, they form the bedrock upon which the entire edifice of healthcare is built. With a deep understanding and unwavering commitment to these principles, we can build trust between patient and provider. The quality of care is enhanced, and the moral integrity of the profession, each and every profession, is maintained. Giving students good, effective guardrails through codes and acknowledging and taking through codes, and through statements and consensus documents can help immensely. Acknowledging and taking seriously the experiences students go through helps students to be resilient, to move forward into clinical practice with confidence. Boy, I wish I had these when I was a student and a staff member. So, it leaves me to, and I'm not going to fall into the silly trap of trying to thank individual people, because boy, I'll forget someone and then I'll be in big trouble. So, academic colleagues, administrative staff, oh gosh, the University of Otago has the best administrative staff, research colleagues across the university and beyond, Te Whata Ora Southern staff I've been working with, Te Whata Ora New Zealand staff I've been working with, Physiotherapy Board, and anyone else I haven't included. That's safe, isn't it? To my family, John and sons Michael, Harris and Connor and their partners, and there they all are, and my 2 little grandsons. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Any questions? Kia ora koutou, ko Neil Pickering aho. He ke mai ho, kei te pokapū matatiki kaui ora. So hi, my name's Neil, and I work with Lynley at the Bioethics Centre, the Department of Bioethics, as we are now to be named. And I've done so for a fairly long time. Now, so I've got to hold this a bit closer to me so I can read it. So I can't see you and and what I've got to say at the same time. So I've had a lot of experience of working with Lynley, and I'm going to really speak now as a colleague and friend of Lynley's. Of 26 years, we have been working together. Also, I'll say a few things, or the things I'm going to say, I'm sure our current HOD, Mike King, would want to say, were he here, but he's decided to have a baby. So, now Lynley noted at the outset that this is not only an inaugural professorial lecture, but also a valedictory address. An interesting cost-saving device the university might consider more widely. And you know there's an old adage which says you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Well, I'm glad to say that in the case of Lynley and of the centre, we know exactly what we've got, and a long time before she will be leaving us. The bioethics web pages start off with the offer that bioethics will enable you to shape the future of healthcare and bioscience. And when it comes to healthcare, I think that Lynley is a shaper. As you've just heard from Lynley, a lot of what she does, a lot of the work she does is based on her own early experiences of being in a vulnerable situation. And she has a tremendous sensitivity to others who are now in those vulnerable situations. Her work is based on sympathy and making things better. She's also, as you will have gathered, I think, from listening to what Lynley said, and certainly when, as you will undoubtedly be doing immediately after this lecture, going to read her entire corpus of works, that she is highly collaborative. She works with different groups of people, all sorts of different groups of people, even including me on occasions. She's a fantastic networker, bringing people together to make things happen and to do research. Now, when it comes to Lynley's research, she's a very unusual combination of things, I think. She's a bioethicist, which means she knows what it is to reason in an abstract kind of way. Keep your finger on the phone, yes. But she combines this with empirical work as well. So you'll see that nearly all Lynley's research, starting with her PhD and on, has had an empirical element to it. She goes out and asks people what they feel and what they want and what they need. At the same time, she never avoids trying to think of things theoretically. You'll notice that she spent a lot of time, for instance, examining the theoretical bases of professionalism and reading widely in that area. So she brings all these things together, I think, in a remarkable way. I've known Lynley for 26 years, and from day one, the same Lynley has turned up every morning at work. And this may seem like a strange comment, but I've certainly had a few colleagues who don't seem to be the same from time to time. But this is a remark on Lynley's character in a way, but she is just the same person every day. The same sane, sensible, easygoing, funny, and friendly person for 26 years, and no doubt for many years before that, and for many years to come, I've no doubt as well. I don't think I'll say anymore. I've used up my time, but I do have a gift for Lynley, which I've told is under the desk. And here it is. So, on behalf of us all, Lynley, congratulations on having become a professor, and we'd like to offer you this gift in recognition of that. Thank you so much. Well, what is it? Right, okay. Well, no doubt Lynley will show us what it is a little later on. Now, I have to take up a slightly different role now. The formal part of these proceedings have come to an end, and I'm now in the very happy position of, first of all, thanking you all so much, both those of you who are here and those of you who are online, for coming along and supporting Lynley. I know it must mean a tremendous amount to her to see so many people here, and to know there are so many other people listening in. I am now in a position to invite you all to join the academic party. That's us people down here, by the way. The academic party, to join us over at the staff club, which is around here somewhere. Somebody will lead you. And join us for some refreshments over there. And I don't know quite what they will consist of, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. Do come and join us for something to eat and drink, whatever there is, and we'll see you over there. Kia ora, ngā mihi nui.